As you might have seen, Dawn of War 4 was recently announced at Gamescom, and I actually got the chance to play a preview build ahead of the game's launch next year. I can't show you any footage from that build, so everything you're looking at is trailer footage and B-roll, but I can tell you about my experience so far, and it's certainly been an interesting one. Now, to get the usual warnings out of the way, this was a very early preview of the game as it actually releases in 2026. The only thing I could play was a scripted skirmish playing as the Blood Ravens against the Greenskins. The main menu also listed campaign, last stand and multiplayer, so it's looking like a sandbox roam around the map capturing locations a la Galactic Conquest in Star Wars Empire at War may not be on the cards, but a gamer can dream. Now, I unfortunately have to start with the bad of this build because it was so glaring, and that was the performance. This ran really badly for me, with highs of maybe 30 and lows of sub 10. Granted, this was in one battle and the next it was consistently at sub 30, but still, I had to abandon an entire battle because I completed an objective and all of a sudden my game was a slideshow. Now, this may just be with me. I haven't been able to check with anyone else because I don't know anyone else that has access to this build, but definitely shop around some opinions because for me, this did kind of take my experience a little bit. Like I said, this is a really early build, so I hope this is just a me problem and it's something that will be ironed out close to the final release, but just bear in mind as I talk about the game. Putting that aside, the actual gameplay is pretty much what you'd expect given what you've heard about the game so far. It's that familiar race to secure resource points and upgrade them to bring in more resources, to make bigger and stronger armies, to take on enemy resource points and take on their bases and armies and, war. If you've played another Dawn of War, Iron Harvest or Realms of Ruin, then you know what to expect. However, the scale definitely felt bigger. The maps have quite a lot of space in them for buildables like bunkers or sandbag walls, which the orcs made quite a bit of use of. That space also allows for much larger armies. In Realms of Ruin, the final battle always looked like a minor tussle between two reasonably sized forces. Here, even a small fight felt pretty chaotic, with upwards of 10 units on screen at once, so an endgame war could easily have double or triple that depending on the unit caps. Playing as the Blood Ravens, you're a lot more focused on quality over quantity, which is in direct opposition to the Greenskins. My units were quite small in size but could easily take on a large number of orcs, no problem. The hero unit in particular packed a lot of heat, being able to snipe enemy towers with a single use of an ability, which seemed pretty crazy. Later units were mechs and tanks, and all of them packed a significant punch and could easily take on a lot of enemies by themselves. This also resulted in my overall army size feeling a lot smaller than the enemy. Granted, this was versus the AI and it was scripted, but I really had to decide where to send my troops to keep the battle in my favour. Early on, that meant using control groups to have small squads to get around the map. I was also constantly running out of currency to recruit new units despite building as many upgrades to capture points as I could. I think unit upkeep is just kind of crazy for these elite troops, so it kept eating away at my income. Anywho, over the course of battling, my units leveled up, and this allowed me to equip new weapons and abilities. This isn't the same for everyone, with some units having a lot more customization than others, but it allowed me to swap weapons relatively on the fly depending on what I was up against. For instance, in the later game, the enemy had a lot more armoured units, so I swapped a lot of my units to their anti-armour weapon to give them a bit more punch. There's also abilities like jetpacks, grenades, and more depending on the unit. These are a bit fiddly to use in combat, especially with the frame rate, but selecting my entire army and hitting tab worked pretty well to cycle through and use them one by one. I think I would advise splitting an endgame army up into their anti-armor and anti-infantry control groups at the very least, as giving targets to every single unit individually quickly gets out of control. Still, overall this was a very fun demo scenario, even with the less than stellar performance. The Necrons turned up, and then the technological sort of empire guys whose name I always forget because I'm awful at the lore. It was a very cool showcase, letting you get a peek at everyone without giving away too much. I would not be surprised if there were a large number of units not included in this to keep some surprises for later. Now to zoom out a little bit and talk about the game as a whole and what we know so far. First of all, it's been developed by King Art Games, who made Iron Harvest. This was a very fun alt history game with all kinds of mechs, so it's a good translation for 40k. I have very few doubts that the actual gameplay will only get better, and battles will feel challenging and intense all the way through. We're also getting 4 campaigns for each of the factions available at launch, with plenty of lore and fully animated and voiced cutscenes for those story nerds out there. If you played Iron Harvest, you know that all the campaigns had pretty decent stories, great performances, and most importantly, varied mission objectives. If you recall Realms of Ruin from 2023, one of the major issues I had is that the campaign devolved into a skirmish spam over and over again. I really hope they don't fall into the same trap with this, as it made the game awfully boring, awfully quick. To get more numbers out of the way, there will be over 10 playable commanders to lead your army, over 110 units, over 30 maps for each multiplayer and skirmish, as well as a map editor and army painter so you can run your pink woke ravens just as the Emperor intended. So as far as game modes are concerned, just as I said in the demo menu, you have campaign, skirmish, multiplayer, and last stand. I haven't played much of the series before, but from what I know, last stand is basically the survival battles from Warhammer 3, but, you know, good. You have a bit of territory that you need to keep for as long as possible, and so last out as long as you can. Sounds fun. I really wish more people would add a galactic war type mode, as I know it'd give me a lot more replay value than a campaign with a story, or just hitting random map on skirmish. That said, Iron Harvest got its world map added years after release, so you never know. Pulling from what little I do know about the Dawn of War series, I know that people were not a fan with the last one. Going off Fred's Steam review, the controls, balance, fun, variety, and just about everything else sucked, but it seems the team are aware of that. They are aiming to go back to the roots of the series when everyone said they were good games, and well, yeah, you're not going to go back to the game where everyone hated it. I just flat out do not have the credentials to talk about what made 3 bad and the other ones before it good, so I don't have any biases going into this, but from what little I played, it felt relatively deep and strategic, but how much of that was the scripted nature of this battle, I can't say. Personally, I'm just excited to see what the other factions have to offer. Of course, the Necrons are the most enticing to my undead self, but honestly, I don't think anyone looks bad here. Space Marines are expensive and strong, Orcs are cheap and expendable, Necrons are slow but can teleport, and the Adeptus Mechanicus, see, I remember their name, totally didn't look it up, are just kind of wacky little guys. If you know me, then you know I love that kind of variety, so bring it on. I think the concerns I have for this are the same concerns I had for Realms of Ruin, and that's making sure there's enough gameplay to keep players coming back once they finish the campaign. I don't want to see a massive push on multiplayer, as that only works if the game is already good and people want to keep playing once they've finished everything else. I want the non-campaign and non-multiplayer gameplay to be as solid as possible and have every battle feel different, rather than being the same mechanical process every single time. It is far too early to say whether we need to be worried or not, so for now, I'm going to settle into a state of relative optimism with a good hit of skepticism. But what do you think of Dawn of War 4 so far? Have you played the others in the series? Did you hate 3? Let me know in the comments below, I really want to know what I should be looking out for. Like the video if you did, subscribe for more, and if you want more videos like this, well, it's not Dawn of War related, but maybe check out my video on the world map mode for Iron Harvest so you can see what this team is capable of.